Hi everybody, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show. It seemed like we started a little late because that clip was only a minute and a half. And what's interesting about that is that was capturing on film, on 16 millimeter, somebody who was shooting on Umatic tape. And Umatic tape, I would say, is one of the things that helped kill 16 millimeter for certain organizations and certain uses, specifically electronic news gathering, whereas they used to shoot on film and then process the film and film in 11 and use in news broadcast. A lot of that was a semi-portable setup. So you saw there was the camera, then there was a separate unit that was the VCR that had a battery pack in it, and so somebody could go out and do a shoot for either some sort of news gathering or some sort of industrial use or whatever. And so I saw that they were taking the cover off and trying to figure out what went wrong. Yes, Umatic is a big problem. Is a big pain. We have several Umatic decks here at the archive, of which maybe 2 work, but we keep the rest for parts. Anyways, we mostly talk about and watch 16 millimeter, so let's get back to that. First film we're going to watch is from our friends at Coronet. This is Learning to Follow Instructions, part of the Beginning Responsibility series in the 70s. All right, enjoy.
This is a story about a wonderful turtle, a very special owl, 3 marvelous elephants, and a boy named David who didn't know how to follow instructions. He really didn't. For instance, at home, his mother once told him how to mail a letter.
Fold it, put it into the envelope, seal the envelope.
But David started to work before his mother finished. So he didn't hear her say,
Be sure to put on a stamp.
Because he didn't pay attention to instructions all the way, he often did things wrong. Yes, he forgot to put on the stamp. Once, David's friend Alan was giving him instructions on how to play checkers.
You can't move straight ahead, only like this or like this.
But because David never asked questions when he didn't really understand something, he often did the wrong things, like moving the checker straight ahead. In school, David often got instructions from his teacher.
First, fold your paper in half. Then, write your story on the bottom. Then, draw a picture on the top.
But David sometimes didn't remember to follow the instructions in the right order. He was supposed to fold the paper first, then write the story, and then draw the picture last. And so, once again, David was doing something wrong. You see, he wasn't going to have enough room for his story. David just didn't know how to follow instructions. Of course, he wasn't the only one. That was why David's teacher decided that the children needed help in learning to follow instructions.
There are 3 things you have to do to follow instructions correctly. You have to pay attention, understand, Remember.
If only David could remember those words. Pay attention, understand, remember. He tried to think about the words at home while he was playing with his toy animals. Just then, something very strange happened. His very special, marvelous animal spoke to him. His wonderful turtle said,
"Pay attention."
That was part of following instructions. Pay attention. Now David remembered. But that wonderful turtle said more than just that. It said,
"Pay attention all the way."
And his very special owl said,
Understand.
that was part of following instructions too. But the very special owl said more than that. It said,
Understand or ask questions.
and his three marvelous elephants said,
Remember.
of course, he remembered. But his three marvelous elephants said more than that. They said,
Remember the order of the instructions.
and they showed him what they meant. Not 3, 1, 2, not 2, 3, 1, but like this, 1, 2, 3. So, how do you follow instructions?
Pay attention all the way.
Understand or ask questions. Remember the order of the instructions. 1, 2, 3.
And to make sure that David wouldn't forget how to follow instructions, his animals said they would help him whenever he needed them. The next day was Saturday. David was watching his mother make some cookies. Mother was following the instructions in a recipe. She had put out everything she needed to make the cookies. No, wait, there aren't any nuts. Aren't there supposed to be nuts? Suddenly, there was David's wonderful turtle. Only David could see it. It said,
Pay attention all the way.
did his mother leave out nuts because she hadn't paid attention all the way to her recipe? So David asked her, and Mother checked. She had overlooked the nuts. Later that day, David's little sister Laurie was upset because her crying doll wouldn't cry. The doll was the kind that cries tears if you give it water. David couldn't imagine why the doll wouldn't cry until his very special owl appeared. Only David could see it. It said,
Understand or ask questions.
did Laurie understand all the instructions for making the doll cry? David asked his mother. Mother watched to see if Laurie was doing anything wrong. Laurie gave the doll water. That was right. Then Laurie turned the doll upside down. That was right. But Laurie didn't understand that she had to squeeze the doll. Now she understood the instructions. Now the doll cried tears. And Laurie was happy. The next day, while David's father was driving the family to a new picnic spot, he pulled off to the side of the road. They were lost. A neighbor had given David's father instructions for how to get there. David couldn't understand why they'd become lost until his 3 marvelous elephants appeared. They said,
Remember the order of the instructions. 1, 2, 3.
Had his father remembered the order? David asked him. Well, Father had turned left at the first stop sign, then right at the second stop sign. But when he checked the map, he saw that he should have turned right first, then left. Instead of being here, they were here. Well, they'd go back and make the turns in the right order. David had helped his father follow instructions. Perhaps now David would follow instructions better in school, too. The next day, David's teacher brought some fish to the classroom. They had to be fed once a day. Now she needed someone to feed them. Many wanted the job. The teacher picked David for the first week, and then she gave him instructions. His turtle appeared, but didn't stay long, because David was paying attention all the way, while his teacher said,
Feed the fish after you finish your work, David. Feed them 1 pinch of food.
Suddenly David's owl was there, but he wasn't there for long, because David was going to ask a question. There was something he didn't understand.
How much is a pinch? This much. Feed this much once a day.
David understood now. He was glad that he'd asked a question. And he started to go feed the fish when his elephants appeared. But they didn't stay for long, because David had remembered the order of the instructions. He was supposed to finish his work first, then feed the fish. So that's what he did. David's teacher was pleased. David was really learning to follow instructions. And when David had finished his work, he fed the fish. Yes, David had learned to follow instructions. But what about you? Do you know how to follow instructions? It's easy.
Pay attention all the way.
Understand or ask questions.
And remember the order of the instructions. 1, 2, 3.
That's how to follow instructions.
You have pointed out that David was haunted by maybe some sort of mental illness. And what's interesting is a lot of these late 60s, early 70s, excuse me, beginning responsibility films are remakes of previous ones, which were very straightforward. And these ones that were made in the 60s and 70s are all like second edition, and they all seem to use some sort of weird supernatural elements, like taking care of things that you share. Is an example of that. Taking care of things that you own, which has a lot of kind of everything kind of comes alive. The Lunchroom Goes Bananas, which is a remake of Lunchroom Manners, which just featured a puppet, Mr. Bungle, teaching the lesson. The Lunchroom Goes Bananas, the food in the lunchroom goes on strike, and so you have talking food. So I think, this is Cornette trying to get things more interesting, maybe because kids are so inundated with media via television that an educational film falls flat, so you have to amp it up, make it more interesting. I don't know. I'm not really sure. Here's another Cornet film. This is Working with Money, and this is part of the Basic Job Skills series. And let's see if the main protagonists are haunted by ghosts or have some sort of mental illness in order to work with money. Enjoy.
One of the basic skills required in many jobs is an ability to handle money, to make calculations, record sales, satisfy cash customers, arrange credit, and make change. As a bank teller, Pam handles money every day. Pam was the first of 6 people interviewed, including Tim, a cab driver, Kathy, a waitress, Martha, a supermarket checker, Debbie, a saleswoman in a record shop, and John, a salesman in a men's store. These people all work with money on their jobs. In a bank, almost every transaction concerns money, either cash or checks.
My job is basically cashing checks, taking savings deposits, checking deposits, and loan payments. And there's a form for everything I do. I have to keep track of every penny. Most people just don't trust you with their money. They keep their own records. So in front of the customer, we make out a receipt and, on the same machine at the same time, we record the transaction. We have to record everything we do with the machine or on general ledger tickets. In order to avoid any error, I have to check everything. On a savings account, say, I check the balance and signature. It's for the customer's own security, so no one else can get money out of the account. Each night, we end up with a certain amount of cash in our cash box. It's called our closing cash. We also open with that amount the next day. Of course, we're responsible for the money we handle.
When you're working with money, you need enough cash to start the workday. Pam's closing cash will provide her with enough money to start the next day's work. Tim, on the other hand, has to provide his own change.
Yeah, the cab company recommends we start off with at least $10 in change. But I usually keep a little extra in my wallet, just so I don't have to stop someplace to break a 20 if someone gives me one. The first thing I do is check out the cab. Then I count my money and read the meter. I mark down the mileage so there's a record of how far I go and how much I make. At the end of the day, I have to check the meter again, fill out the form, and hand it in to the dispatcher. I'm pretty careful with filling out the forms. You see, I get a percentage of everything on the meter, but I can get docked money if there's a mistake. Once I'm on the street, I'm on my own. I work with money all day, taking fares and making change. Oh yeah, sometimes it works out even, say $2 on the meter. But that's not always so good for me. You see, when you're driving, you have to depend on tips to make a living. A $1.65 fare might hand me a couple of singles and tell me, keep the change. But a $2 fare, it might be easier not to tip me at all. That's no problem, though. Some days are good, some bad. It all works out. I have to split the money on the meter with the cab company, so I've got to keep a record of where I take people and how much the fare was. I usually do best downtown, short hauls with business people, shoppers. That racks up money fast on the meter. Sometimes I have a long haul, like out to the airport, and get a nice tip. That helps, especially if I can get a fare coming back downtown. Another thing I have to do is keep a record of all the tips I get, so I can declare them on my income tax. The tax people are pretty strict, believe me, so I have to do some careful paperwork. But I guess that's just like any businessman, really. You're working with money all the time.
In many ways, Tim's job is like Pam's job in the bank. He has to handle cash, keep accurate records, and work with the public. Both Tim and Pam have service jobs. Kathy has a service job too. She's a waitress and handles money, but her job involves more than that.
The money work involved in my job is mostly collecting money, returning change, and keeping track of each customer's check. You've got to make sure that your checks are all perfect. You've got to be accurate. You have to get accustomed to the menu and learn the prices. As soon as you have the prices in your head, you can save yourself a lot of time when you write up the order. You have to be honest and accurate. You try to be calm, methodical, orderly. Then, when people order, you'll be paying attention to what they say, and it'll be registering in your mind. At the beginning of your shift, you have to go to the cashier and sign out your checks, your customer receipts. They're all numbered. You have to account for every receipt in the pad. You have to be careful with your check. It's pretty easy to lose one, you know. If you lose a check, or if somebody walks out without paying, you'll have to pay a fee for it in our place.
Besides taking money, in some restaurants, a waitress may also handle the cash register and credit cards, as well as her own tips. A retail sales job, selling products, also involves skills in handling money. Martha is a checker in this supermarket.
Every checker has her own cash drawer, and to start the day we get 2 5s, $50 in ones, a roll of quarters, a roll of dimes, a roll of nickels, and 2 rolls of pennies for making change. The office takes readings of total sales rung up on my cash register several times during my shift to make sure there aren't any discrepancies, and then just before I go off. I'm a checker, so I handle money all day, and most of my job is using a cash register. You get better with a cash register. After a while, punching the right numbers just seems to be automatic. You just know where the numbers and keys are like you would on a typewriter. But while I'm working the cash register, I look at the amount on the item, and I look at what I ring up. I make sure it's correct. To avoid a possible misunderstanding, you keep the customer's money in sight until you've finished making change. You have to be quick so you don't make people wait. But you have to work at your own pace. If you hurry, You're bound to make mistakes, like charging too much for an item, an overring. Then you try to take it off another grocery item. But if you can't, you have to cancel the wrong price out and correct it at the end of the bill. Then you have to write up a cancel report sheet and have it okayed by the office. In our state, you have to figure in the sales tax too. After the items are totaled, we ring up the amount of tax on the register.
Debbie handles money for goods too, but she needs different skills and knowledge in her retail sales job.
We sell records and art supplies, and, I really enjoy it. You have to learn about the things you're selling and about your store, and you have to ask questions. It's the only way to keep up with your stock, your inventory. I guess you could say that money is half of my job, and the customer is the other half. Your attitude is important. You realize that you have to make money for your store. We accept checks up to $50, but we need a person's identification and phone number. A driver's license is the usual identification. We also accept returns and give the customer credit on a new purchase. It's our store's policy.
Debbie knows her job, handling both customers and money. Let's take a look at one more retail sales job. John is a men's clothing salesman.
To make a sale, you have to find out what the customer needs, what he's looking for, and you try to help him. Quite a few customers ask my opinion. You tell them what you think, and you know what it does for them. The more you know about styles, different fits, and the customer's needs, the better you'll do. And that's where the money comes in. For convenience, a lot of our customers use credit cards to charge their purchases. Very often, the customers will spend more with their charge cards than they do with cash. In our store, if you don't know the customer or if he's charging a large amount, you call in and give the number of his card to make a credit check. Anyone can make a mistake, so just as a customer will look over the bill and count the change, we check credit cards. If the card is okay, the store will give you an authorization number to mark on the form. You can also check the revoked card list to make sure the card wasn't lost or stolen or out of date. By following the rules, both the salesman and the customer are protected.
Each of the jobs we have looked at, as well as many hundreds of others, require an ability to handle money accurately. Safely, rapidly, and honestly. This is one of the most basic job skills.
All right, that's exciting. Let me adjust my mic a little bit here. Is that better? I don't know. I took it down a little bit last night because I was doing something. I was getting a lot of surface noise. So there's a balance there. Sometimes a hard drive is spinning and you hear this sound. It's kind of frustrating. So last night I did a show, AV Geeks at the Oscars, where we showed some short films that were nominated or had won Academy Awards, and I have it on the scanner back here. So some of you who were at my show, I apologize for repeating what you're seeing, but here's a couple of films, and we're going to go ahead and scan them while we watch them. So this first one looks like it's claymation, but it's not really. It's another person who's doing that similar technique. This is Sundae in New York. Enjoy.
Start spreading the news. I just might be here to stay. Hey, I've got a real good part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond shoes are basically longing to stray, rather, excuse me. Right through Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island, too. I want to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep. And, of course, find I'm king of the hill. Top of the heap. These gridlock blues, for instance, are currently being investigated by a specially appointed commission of handpicked delegates sympathetic to the legislative parameters of the situation. In old New York. Hey, if I can make it here, quite frankly, I'll be able to make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York. No, really, folks, this morning I took my garbage out and the truck was just pulling away. I yelled, am I too late? The driver said, not at all, jump in. How am I doing?
Hey, waiter, check, please.
I love to wake up in a city that never sleeps. And find I'm number one, top of the list, king of the hill.
And incidentally, a heck of a nice guy.
These, oh boy, these Meshuggah blues are melting away. Oh, swing it, boys. I'm going to make a brand new start of it in old New York. If you can make it here, you'll be able to make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York. Personally, I think New York is very therapeutic. Hey, an apple a day is great for one's constitution.
Hey, it's tough being a mayor and a movie star at the same time.
Great. And that's, of course, Ed Koch, which was a former New York mayor. Let's see, what do we got next? I think this is Munro, which is based on a Jules Feiffer story and is animated by Gene Deitch, and features his young son, Seth, who was an artist in his own right when he grew up. And his other kid was Kim Deitch, who helped do Quasi at the Quackadero and was also an underground comic artist. So here's Munro. Enjoy.
Now, this is all about Munro. Who was for? There was nothing unusual about Munro. He wouldn't wash his face.
There's a good darling. No. Good dear.
He wouldn't eat.
Good dear. Come, dear, dear darling, dear. That's a good
He wouldn't
dear,
sleep.
That's a good dear darling, dear.
His was a stable, well-rounded, fully integrated life. Then, one day, he received a letter. He had one of his big friends read it to him.
It's from Local Draft Board 92, and it says your friends and neighbors send you greetings.
So while the other kids played and chased and did exactly what was normal for them, Munro came to the shocking realization that at the age of 4, he'd been drafted. The next morning, Munro went for his physical.
Nah, they'll never take me.
Oh, my back! I got a bad back, boy.
Well, my doctor says army food will kill me. Are you kidding? Me in the army? Boy, they want to let me off, I know. I got a verblinter of the spine. Oh, they have to let me off. They'll kill my mother.
Unbutton me, mister.
Now the left eye, now the right eye, that's all.
Drop your shorts. Now hop around on one foot, that's all. Any history of mental illness in your family? Okay, that's all.
Munro tried to explain that he was just a little boy. But the doctors were too busy drafting a famous ball player to even notice him.
Smile, Billy. Hey, Doc, pump his hand. That's it. Shake like you like him. Good.
And so Munro was classified 1A.
My father's got friends in the Pentagon.
Well, I'm going to appeal.
A fat lot they care about my mother, boy.
Button me, mister.
Go home, settle all your business affairs. You'll hear from us in 21 days.
Kindly step to the rear of the car, please.
And so Munro went to war. The sergeant couldn't speak English very well. He spoke in code.
I want to welcome you men of the Army. You meet us halfway, we'll meet you halfway. This is a time of world struggle. I'll explain the issues. Our side is in favor of God, the other side isn't. Any questions?
It was all very simple. Even Munro could understand. Okay, this won't kill you. Move up. Okay, let's go. This won't kill you. Come on, move up. Let's go. Okay. Now Munro was a full-fledged soldier. He learned to play all the games that soldiers play, like face.
or another game called Take This Man's Name, where everyone must sweep and clean. And then the man who was it would walk past each bunk and say,
Take this man's name.
Oh, there were so many games to play. Well, poor Munro, oh boy, he was very tired. He went to the sergeant.
I'm only 4. I'm only 4.
It is the official policy of the Army not to draft men of 4. Ergo, you cannot be 4. Ergo, you only think you're 4. Go on sick call. So, the next morning, Munro went on sick call. Everybody's faking, everybody's faking. You, what's wrong with you?
I'm only 4.
How long you been feeling this way?
I'm only 4.
Open your mouth, we'll soon fix this.
I'm only 4.
Munro was sent on his way with a box of white pills and a warning to stop faking. Sick call was over. But try as he might, Munro could not get over the idea that he was 4. He went to the psychiatrist.
I'm a lingerer, eh? Bucking for a psycho discharge, are you? I've handled your type before.
He went to the chaplain.
My son, you will find life here in the Army so much more rewarding if you make the best of it and decide to face realities. Let's have another chat real soon.
He went to the colonel.
Get out of here, you little goof-up, or I'll shove you in the stockade for a month.
Well, Munro promised he'd try, really try this time. For if so many wise men claimed it was impossible for him to be 4, how could he be 4?
From now on, he would be a soldier. He would march with the best of them. He would shoot with the best of them. And if need be, he would go to war with the best of them.
A new bunch of men.
See that man? That's a soldier. That's what we're going to train you to be. We're going to separate the men from the boys.
And Munro began to cry.
Hey, stop that crying, soldier.
The sergeant looked embarrassed.
Stop that crying, soldier. Stop that crying, soldier. Stop that crying, soldier.
Then out came the general.
Soldiers don't cry. Only little boys cry. Are you a soldier or a little teensy-weensy crying baby boy?
Yeah.
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 Well, obviously, then, you're nothing but a little baby boy. Obviously.
Simple logic.
And once they'd said it, Munro began to look different to them.
I rule that this is a little boy. Of course. It's logical. A little boy.
Sign here, just a simple release.
The day Munro was sent home, they held a big parade in his honor. There were newsreel photographers and television and his mother and his father and all the kids in the neighborhood. And the general even read a message from the president.
I hold no fear for our nation's future when even a mere lad of 4 is stirred strongly enough by our cause to enlist himself in the service of his country.
I'm from the American Legion. You want to join?
Munro was a hero. Ah, his parents were so proud. But from that time on, whenever he became cranky, his mother would just remind him of the Army, and Munro would be a good boy.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Papa.
A very good boy indeed.
Phenomenal, and that won an Academy Award. Best Animated Short. This next film, I believe, won in 65 or 66 for Best Live Action Short, and it's foreign. It's in French, but you'll dig it nonetheless. It's got subtitles. This is Le Poulet, or Poulet, or The Chicken. Enjoy.